Okay, it's 3 in the afternoon. We're going to start now our last in the series of seminars that we offered, especially for the teachers who are tired, wearied, exhausted at this point. Because, as we said in the very first session of this series, traditionally it is around this time of the school year when teachers can start feeling the exhaustion, the tiredness, especially those who start the school year with energy, with a lot of enthusiasm, giving their all. But we cannot avoid it. It can happen really that at a certain point, and usually it's around this time, when things become more tiring than usual, more demanding on our part in terms of dedication, in terms of what is expected of us, what is being asked of us. So here's the overview for our afternoon session. In the first place, we're going to try to reconnect our daily teaching to something beyond merely job, employment, task that we have to do. We're going to reconnect it to a deeper spiritual mission. And that's one of the best ways that we can re energize ourselves and keep on moving forward if we reach that point when we would even want to give up. We would even want to quit. And some people really reach that point when at this time of the year they start asking themselves, what did I get myself into? Why did I get into teaching? Now, um, it is not very difficult to reconnect our work as teachers to a deeper spiritual mission because, come to think of it, we when we are inside the classroom, we're really dealing with human beings. Remember what we said in some of the sessions in the past? We are dealing with the thinking, feeling human beings. And therefore, these thinking, feeling beings are really, well, human beings, children of God. I mean, that's one way of looking at it. And we are in a position to influence, to impact, to affect in a big way, in a positive way, these persons entrusted to our care. That's why I always like to use that expression. We are not just given subjects to teach, we are entrusted with children to take care of. In one of the seminars that is uploaded in my YouTube channel, that is in fact the subject matter or the title that I put: Stop Teaching Subjects and Start Teaching Children. Stop teaching merely a textbook and start really thinking about the persons entrusted to our care. We are not just given a subject to teach, we are entrusted with people. In fact, we can even say we are entrusted with those who will be the leaders of tomorrow. Because whatever we are able to do with these children inside our classroom today, sooner or later, they're the ones who are going to be out there leading companies, leading communities, leading society. And how the Philippines is going to be from 20, 30 years from now will greatly depend on how we prepare these young kids inside our classroom today to be the leaders of that time. We're going to reflect on the inner signs of weariness, tiredness, exhaustion, and hopefully to connect the that tiredness, exhaustion to find God's voice within them. There's a way of being able to see that in the midst of the classroom chaos, one of the subject matters we talked about, in the midst of kids who are disrespectful, who are difficult to manage, difficult to handle, we can actually hear the voice of God through them. It's almost like God telling us, I am entrusting these young people to you because I know you can discipline them, help them grow up to be men and women of character, regardless of how they are right now. And then we will be able to later on design a personal plan for renewal, which is anchored not just merely on mental health, but yes, we too need to take care of our mental health, but especially anchored on faith, rest, and purpose. If we are able to do this, then no reason for us to give up, to quit. That's why the title of the session today is Still Standing, Still Hanging On, Still Hanging Tough, even if things become very difficult to manage, um, challenges become too much, or at least seemingly too much for us to overcome. And then finally, well, a prayer, a plan, and a promise. So that's what we're going to end with, to make a heartfelt promise to God, to our students, and also to ourselves to keep going with grace. And grace will never be lacking, because that's why in one of the sessions this past few weeks, we are always reminded that we are not just taking on a job, an employment, we are taking on a mission. And that mission usually comes with grace. It's like a vocation. That's what many of us who have been in the teaching profession for decades would call this profession. It's a mission and a vocation. We have been called to do it. We have been, like, from eternity, chosen. By whom? Well, by God, to take on this task. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We will start first with a prayer, and then with a plan, and then finally with a promise. So let's start first with a prayer. When strength fails, but faith remains. Well, in some of these past few sessions, you have heard us narrate a story for you to reflect on, to think about, stories that would bring home the lesson, the essence of the ideas that we want to pass on. Here's a story, and it's entitled The Teacher Who Stayed After the Bell. You can put yourselves in the your school situation. You imagine yourself. 4:30 normally is when the bell rings, and you see kids running out, being picked up by their parents, their yayas, some of them walking home, some of them catching a ride. And sometimes we stay because we need to finish checking some papers, because we need to submit something, we need to give the unit plans for the coming new quarter that's just about to start, whatever. There are many reasons why many times we find ourselves, even after the bell has rung, we stay on. So the last bell had rung. The corridors, once alive with laughter and footsteps, or even running around, kids running around, now are quiet. The kind of silence that only tired teachers know. Then there's that teacher, Miss Ramirez, let's call her. Miss Ramirez sat at her desk, staring at a pile of ungraded papers that she didn't even have the strength to touch yet. Let's situate. Maybe this is at the end of the first quarter exams, and you have, okay, you're finished with one section, but there are three more sections to check, three more classes, subjects, in fact, different subjects to grade. The clock read 4:37 p.m. Everyone else had gone home. Her body screamed to leave too, like she's torn. She wants to go home, but she also doesn't want to bring home the work. I mean, like you and I, many times when we get home, we really just want to forget about school, forget about test papers, forget about the argument you had with that third year or grade eight student in one of your subjects. So her body was calling for that, go home. But something, and she couldn't explain what it was, told her to stay. Outside, the janitor was sweeping the hallway, like what you see typically in schools. And then inside, a faint sound broke the silence, muffled sob, crying of a child. Miss Ramirez followed it to the back of the classroom, and there she found Miguel, one of her students, sitting alone on the floor, hugging his backpack, and his eyes were red. Miss Ramirez said softly, "Hey, Miguel, you're still here." Miguel didn't look up. "I didn't want to go home yet," he said. She didn't ask why. Miss Ramirez just sat beside him, quietly, until he finally whispered, "They're fighting again. Mom and Dad are fighting again. And I hate it when they fight," Miguel said. Miss Ramirez, like many of us, we don't have a prepared speech for that. She didn't have a prepared speech ready. She didn't have the perfect words. Like you and I, we can be at a loss for words. All she could say was, "I know, I'm sorry." And then, because she didn't know what else to do, she just stayed. She tried to talk about whatever she could make Miguel answer, reply to. They talked about his favorite game, his drawing on the wall, his dream of becoming a pilot, his classmates, how he is with them. Just talked and then listened to whatever Miguel had to say. 15 minutes later, Miguel stood up, smiled faintly, and said, "Ma'am, thanks for staying." And then he left. That night, Miss Ramirez finally managed to get home, still tired but different. She realized something she had almost forgotten, that sometimes the greatest lessons are not written on the blackboard, on the whiteboard. They happen after the bell, when love decides to stay a little longer. Some of you may have actually experienced that, of just listening to a student who may be crying or maybe not crying, but is forcing himself or herself not to break down. Not that they're waiting for an advice, but they just need somebody to listen to them, somebody to stay, stay put, and to be there. That love language of presence. A teacher, exhausted and unseen, decides to stay one more day, and that extra day changed a student's life. That is the story of many of us, teachers who stayed on. Some key ideas. We can start seeing the classroom as like a holy ground, a sacred ground, because it is there inside the classroom when God's presence becomes palpable, almost like you can feel God's presence there in the ordinary fatigue that we experience. It's like God's way of saying, I will give you the grace because I have entrusted these people to you. And I know how difficult it can be, terribly difficult, even it can be. I mean, think of a profession that is capable of like being in touch with the very soul or spirit of people, of clients. In our case, the students are our clients. And when we teach them, we are like being given the opportunity to influence their very mind, their very attitude, their very disposition, their very soul. I mean, aside from pastors, priests, nuns, who else has that capacity to have an influence on the very soul? I mean, how the student will strive to be good human being in the future greatly depends on how we teach them now, how we handle them inside the classroom now. That's why the classroom is like, I don't know, a place where there is an encounter with souls. That's why it's a key idea to start seeing the classroom as like an altar, holy ground, and we who are in a position to teach them to be good and to do good, effectively to be saints, to get to heaven. Wow, that is the hidden apostolate. Teachers, sorry, parents may see us teachers only as, you know, handling science, math, English, biology, chemistry. But the reality is, we are teaching the students more than just academic subjects. We're teaching them to grow up to be men and women of character, to be good and to do good, even if it is difficult, even if others are not, and even when, well, seemingly it's not the fad anymore to be good. Because you see in primetime news, teleseries, telenovelas, full of criminality, evil things. But here inside the classroom, we are showing them, you students can be good and should in fact grow up to be good. In the first place, to do the powerful example of our life. That's why teaching is that, a hidden apostolate. No one may see that, but God knows. Heaven sees the good that we do. Our audience is God watching us as formation, character formation, training of these young people to grow up to be upright, moral, with virtues. God watches that. And that's why at a certain point in our teaching profession, we cannot help resort to prayer. I'm sure you've experienced handling students who you can say, I've done everything I can. I talk to the student, I talk to the parents, I tried to make him see the importance of studying hard, not being lazy, being responsible, being kind, being caring. But in spite of all the attempts, in spite of all the things I've tried to do, he seems not to be responding. And then at a certain point, we can only say, the only thing I can do is to pray, to entrust this special case to God. Especially nowadays, the report I receive um, is we have more and more cases of students with special needs, additional needs, students who need more attention than normal. And you start even feeling helpless at a certain point because the student just doesn't respond, doesn't seem to understand what you're trying to do. Prayer as oxygen, learning to breathe with God in the middle of all this chaos. And so I'd like you to reflect before we mm, look at some tools. Lord, what have you been teaching me through my exhaustion? I'm tired of having to remind my students. At the end of the day, if I count the number of times I had to repeat, keep quiet, sit up straight, eyes here on the board, stop talking, listen here, try to count how many times you have said all those things and you feel exhausted. But there is something there. Our Lord may be teaching us something through that exhaustion. Maybe He's trying to tell us, without me, you can do nothing. But with me, you can do everything. So here is a mini tool that I can encourage you to have. You know, have those small cards, index cards, or even just a cutout, or better yet, if something that you can laminate and hang there on your desk, on top of your table, or stack of these quotations, short lines, like prayer cards, you can say, that when you start feeling exhausted, tired, feeling helpless, you look at these cards. The quotations like, Lord, you called me to teach, not to shine, but to light others. Or I remember mentioning in one of my talks in this series, students come to our classroom with an unlit candle and they're actually saying, Ma'am, sir, please light my candle. I don't want to be in the dark anymore. And that's the prayer. Lord, you called me to teach, not to shine, but to light others or to pass on the light to my students. Or a line like this, remind me that fatigue is not failure, it is love spent well. I'm sure you can find so many in the internet. You know, you Google it, um, 5 minute heart reset prayers or one line prayers for a wearied teacher, for a tired teacher, and then put them in small cards like that. One quotation, one card. And then every so often, when you especially feel the exhaustion, the tiredness, you spend 5 minutes. That's the prayer. That's a pause. Just spend 3, 4, 5 minutes reflecting on that quotation and have many like that because at a certain point, we will really need a lot of that. Okay, let's go to the plan then. Rebuilding hope one small practice at a time is the theme. Renewal requires rhythm, not revolution. I mean, we don't have to immediately think of, I need to take a sabbatical. I need a long break. I have to get away from it all and spend the whole weekend in Baguio or whatever. Or whatever. No, renewal doesn't have to mean that. And this is why we will look at a certain structure that a plan that can enable us to take a bit of rest. That's the core structure. The rest plan, REST. What's one habit I must release and one grace that I must receive? We look at it. Why am I getting tired? I shout too much. I raise my voice too often. I get upset about the very littlest things. So maybe it's one habit we need to release, that we don't have to react to every infraction, every mistake of a student. And maybe that's the grace I need: more patience, more understanding, more self-control. Minsan, that's what the teacher may actually be lacking: the ability to control one's temper, the ability to control one's um, like the immediate reaction to shout, scream, yell, to raise our voice, especially if we have a kind of student you know what I'm talking about. You sometimes can have a student we have a certain um, like we have labeled him as pasaway, hard-headed, difficult to manage, always looking for ways to get away with the responsibility. We may have already labeled some students like that. And when they do something, our reaction is more exaggerated than how we would react to the valedictorian student doing the infraction. What's one habit I must release and one grace I must receive? So, the mini tool, we have REST, letter R, reconnect with purpose. Why did I begin in the first place? Um, this is the plan. We need to go back again and again to our why. Simon Sinek has that best-selling book, Begin with a Why. Because if you always understand, realize, why am I in this profession? Why did I get into teaching? Why do I continue going to school even if uh, things become difficult? Reconnect with that purpose, the purpose-driven life, the purpose-driven profession, job. Why did I begin to think? Um, that will give us our purpose, and that will give us the meaning of why we continue doing what we're doing, and why it's worthwhile. Later on, we realize it's worthwhile. Many of us decided to become a teacher because we thought we could change the world for the better, because we thought we can have a great impact on people, young people. Some of us decided to become a teacher because our why is this: education, teaching is the best way to fix society, to fix the future of our society, to make sure that every single student in your class now will not go on to be corrupt, whether they are in the construction business or in politics or in public service or in um, what, government offices, whatever job they are going to take in the future, that they are going to be upright. That's our why. We are fixing the world to make it a better place. E, establish margins, learning sacred pauses in the day. We have to tell ourselves, if I feel like this, I start questioning why I continue being in the profession. I start thinking about getting into other professions, quitting. That's when we have to establish margins. And then to pause, to reflect, and then to pray, and then to find the supernatural in well, what we are doing, to find the hand of God effectively, that we are encountering these difficulties, maybe because this is God's way of making me a better teacher, a more expert teacher, a teacher who does not just um, work on helping students to pass a quiz, a test, a subject, or a school year. God wants us to help students pass the test of life, that they will become good people, good human beings. Simplify priorities is letter S. Not every battle is yours to fight. As I mentioned earlier, some things we need to let go of. Don't um, like we don't have to react to every infraction that happens inside the classroom. We make our um, rules, procedures very clear to our students, and we just do the procedures over and over until they become routine. The other things may be less important, less significant. But letter T is very important. We go back to the part one, the prayer. We have to take care of our soul as well, feeding our interior life intentionally. And then we can even say, for some of us teachers, our martyrdom, quote unquote martyrdom, is there in our having to teach well day after day, even if we have students who don't seem to cooperate, to follow us, to make life easier for us. It's very important that we teachers maintain a supernatural life. As I said earlier, our profession is a vocation, it's a mission. If it is merely employment, then I tell you, it is really exhausting, tiring, and even um, you can go crazy, really. If all we see in our work is that it's a source of income, in fact, no matter how high the tuition, no matter how high our salary may be in the teaching profession, that will never be enough. No matter how high it is, it will never be enough if all we are after in this profession is the salary, the income, money. Sure, we need to be paid and we have to be paid well. But if that is the only end goal, purpose, objective of a teacher, sooner or later, he or she is going to be deeply, greatly frustrated. But if our why is my students have become better human beings, that is my why. That is what gets me or got me into this work in the first place. To see young people grow up to be fantastic human beings, then it is never going to be exhausting. Tend to our soul, feeding our interior life intentionally. So then, a reflection for us to consider. How am I running? Am I running on empty? I'm going to give you now a quiz, and I want you to do this um, well. You get a pen and paper, or you can use your cell phone, or you can also use the laptop, the computer, open a Word file, and I want you to score, to give yourselves a score on every item. The scoring is like this: 1 to 5. It's a scale of 1 to 5. Statement one, if the statement is not true for you, then you give one, a score of one to that statement. But if it is very true for you, then it's a 5. If it is sometimes true, not all the time, but sometimes, then it's a 3. If more often it's not true, but not all the time, it's sometimes, but it's more on the not true, that's a 2. And then very true, but not all the time also very true. It's only sometimes, then you give yourself a 4. Okay. And there are let me see, 1, 2, 3, 5 areas. Here we go. So, ready with your pen and paper. Under spiritual battery, I begin my day aware that God is beside me. Is that always very true? I or no, not true for me. In fact, I don't even pray. That's one. I pray not only about my work, but through my work. I see my work as a way of pleasing God. That's very true for me or not true. I find meaning even in small or difficult moments. I find meaning. This challenging student reacts this way. Ah, there's a meaning there. God is like talking to me through that person. That's five or one, not true. I regularly receive spiritual nourishment. For Catholics, going to Mass, not just on Sundays, praying, visiting the Blessed Sacrament, going to confession, doing reflections. For those who are non Catholics, praying, reading the Bible, reflecting. Very true or not true? One, five, or one. I feel that my teaching is part of my vocation. It's not just my job. Not true? One or very true? Five. Let's go to, so you already have given yourselves five scores there, right? Take note of that. As I said, I hope you're writing it down on a piece of paper or you're taking note on a cell phone or in the laptop itself. Let's go to the next set, your emotional battery. I end most days feeling peaceful, not drained. Always very true for me, five, or not true. I can name what I'm feeling without being ruled by it. I know exactly what I'm feeling. That's very true for me. I feel frustrated, I feel angry, I feel tired, exhausted, which are different. Exasperated is another form. I can name it what I'm feeling. Is that very true? Or is it not true? Like, I don't know. It's a Monday and I feel sluggish. I don't know why. That's that means your answer should be not true for me. You cannot name why you're feeling how you're feeling. Next, I can laugh, play, and have fun, enjoy with my students. Very true or not true? I don't carry school problems home in my mind all night. If your answer is no, not true, because kahit sa gabi, I wake up in the middle of the night feeling anxious about the deadline, feeling anxious about the student who answered back at me earlier, and I want to talk to the parents, and I am so upset. So you carry your problems, school problems at home. Therefore, your answer there is not true. I have safe people I can talk to when I'm overwhelmed. Very true. You have or not true. You don't have that you can actually look forward to having coffee with them or you go to their office and are able to, just let it all out. Let's go to the next set. Physical battery. I get enough sleep to feel truly rested. Is it very true? Or are you like some teachers who have a hard time sleeping? And even if they are able to sleep, it's already very late in the evening. It takes them a lot of time to be able to finally be able to sleep. Or they wake up feeling that their sleep was very shallow. Shallow. You know that? You get out of bed and you feel like I felt like I was half awake the whole time. Easily getting disturbed by the noise outside, by I eat real meals, not just coffee and crumbs. Very true or not true? I move my body or stretch daily. I'm able to have physical exercise. I take breaks before I reach breaking point. I know I never get to have break. That's one. Yes, I always make it a point, especially. when after every class I go to the faculty room and I really try to recover my strength. I schedule real rest, not just collapsed exhaustion. Very true? Five or not true? And then let's go to the next relational battery. I maintain friendships outside work. I continue to be in touch with my high school classmates, and then I have friends in the neighborhood, and then I have friends in the church, and then I have this social civic community club that I joined. I have friendships outside work. That's very true for me. Or is your world all about home, school, home, school, home, school? One. I feel appreciated by at least one colleague or leader. Very true. I hope for you. I intentionally express gratitude to others. As in, I actually go out of my way to thank people, not because they did something for me at that moment. That's not intentional, but that I would go out of my way to express gratitude. That's five. I spend quality time with my family or with a community. I forgive quickly and avoid grudges. Very true or not true? Finally, let's go to purpose battery. I know clearly why I teach. My why still moves me. That's five, or is it one? I don't even know anymore why I became a teacher. I just need a job. I just need to bring home food on the table. I can see God's hand in my professional journey. Very true or not true? I celebrate small wins in the classroom. I still believe that one good teacher can change a life and can change the world. Finally, I want to keep growing, not just surviving. So, you graded yourself 1 to 5, scales of 1 to 5. Now, what you need to do is add them all up, get the total of all the ones, twos, threes, fours, fives that you scored yourself in all the questions, add them all up. And here is an interpretation. If you got 80 points to 100, wow, your flame is strong. Keep your rhythms of prayer, rest, and joy. If your score, if the total points you got is between 60 and 79, you're glowing, but need gentle refueling. You need to add quiet, gratitude, and a little help from some friends. But if you got below 60, if your score is below 60, you are running on fumes. It's practically you're running on reserve gas. Yung bang the light is almost yellow, red in the meter, yung gas meter of your car. You need to step back. Remember, rest is not a reward, it is a responsibility. We're not machines. We need rest as much as machines would also need rest, in fact. I remember when I was a kid, my parents would come home and they would check the television. If it is very hot already, that means it's been running. That means we've been watching for too long. And they would turn it off because they would say the television will get ruined, will get destroyed. If machines need the rest, much more we human beings. And so, a bit of reflection we need to do. Where is God inviting me to pause, to breathe, and to be restored? Try to look at those that we scored ourselves in. Where is God inviting you to pause, to breathe, and to be restored? Is it in your spiritual battery? Maybe that's what we need to work on, to pray more, to supernaturalize more our work, to see the supernatural aspect of what we do. Or is it in the emotional battery of having people we can count on to um, encourage us, to push us? Or maybe really sometimes it's just merely kulang sa tulog. That's very important, especially nowadays. The researchers, experts say that we are sleep deprived because of the presence now of all these competitions of sleep. I mean, instead of sleeping, we finish the K-drama episodes. Instead of sleeping, there's the hundreds, thousands of music in Spotify to listen to. Instead of sleeping, there are the more than a billion videos in YouTube, in Netflix, in Hulu, in Disney Plus, in TikTok, in Reels. We need sleep. Physical rest is essential. Or relational. Um, we have no time for friends. We have no time for family. We have no time for networking with other human beings. And I know some teachers who are like that. They become so busy with schoolwork, with their job in the school, that they always say no to invitations of reunions, homecomings, visits to relatives. Maybe that's where God is asking you to rest, or your purpose. Which among those, where among those five, is God inviting you to pause, to breathe, and to be restored? Finally, we go to the part three. Remember, we are talking about prayer, plan, and then finally the promise, holding on to hope. I want to encourage you because we need good teachers in the teaching profession. Unfortunately, there are some teachers who enter the profession and they are only interested in the salary. They are only interested in being able to have an income. Well, those of you who attend seminars like this, you come because you see your purpose, because you want to be better. We need teachers like that in the profession. So we need teachers who will persevere, who will hold on to hope, who will promise themselves, God, and society and the students, even if it's exhausting, wearisome, I will not quit. Perseverance is not perfection. It is staying when you could have left, when you could have chosen to leave. So, suggested assignment that I can give to you, try to write yourself um, a letter. Try to write a letter to your future self. If one day you encounter yung really tough, difficult challenges in the profession and you want to quit, now imagine yourself in that at that point of um, quitting, giving up. Now you're not in that state. Write a letter to your future self. Dear future me, when you feel like giving up again, and then go on to talk about why it's worthwhile staying in the teaching profession, why it's worthwhile struggling not just to be an ordinary teacher, a mediocre teacher, a so-so teacher, a regular one, but a great one, a great teacher who is not only interested in making students pass a quiz, a test, an exam, a subject, or even a school year, but really a teacher who wants to see their students go on to be great men and women of character who will be in a position to change the world for the better. Try to reflect on these three powerful promises. I will rest before I quit. I've heard teachers who are like that. Every time there is a challenge, a parent complaining, the teacher's reaction is, I give up, I quit, I cannot stay on. And they say that year after year, but they continue on anyway. Or the principal reprimands them for their frequent tardiness, and the teacher will say, I quit. I give up. I'm trying my best here, and my supervisor doesn't seem to appreciate all the effort I'm putting in. All he sees or all she sees is the wrong things I do. I will rest. Maybe at that moment, we really just need a bit of rest. I will choose presence over performance. Students are waiting for us. I will remember that love, not lesson plans, is in the end what lasts. So, sort of closing prayer and commitment to say, Lord, teach me to teach again. Give me the joy of beginnings, the peace of endings, and the courage to keep standing. Still yours, still here, which is really what the title uh, of this last session in the series is all about: a prayer, a plan, and a promise. Some final quotes to reflect on to end this session. The measure of your strength is not how much you accomplish, but how deeply you continue to love when it hurts. And that is, in fact, real love. When you are sacrificing yourself for the sake of the beloved, that's real love. And the beloved in this case sometimes may be difficult to love. The students, some of them defiant, some of them not very nice, some of them not kind, some of them not courteous, not caring, not responsible. But how we deeply continue to love when it hurts, that is when it becomes real love. Marvin Berkowitz, the author of Primed, which in fact is like the guiding principles of all these series, the series of 20 seminars, said, teachers don't burn out because they stop caring. They burn out because they care too much for too long without being cared for. And at the same time, we need to send a message to administrators. Administrators, you have to take care, especially if you're good teachers, that they persevere, that they don't quit, that they don't give up, that they don't decide to just sell insurance and go to other profession when they could really be making a difference in the lives of these young people. And finally, the victory belongs not to the unwearied, but to the unwavering. Teaching is tiring, is exhausting. It can be exhausting because we are like candles burning, providing light to the students, to the world, but we are consuming ourselves. That's why at a certain point we will get tired. We will feel tiredness. But it's at that point when we will have to rely on the prayer, the plan, and then the promise that we made. Okay, just to end, um, we have the November series coming up, made up of five most, how do you call these? Five most requested modules of Catalyst. Um, Developing grit, resilience, and empathy, how to create a kind and caring classroom, teachers as agents of character formation, better classroom management, and then character-based mental wellness for resilient learning communities, especially because of this present situation we find ourselves in now, where we are dealing with more and more students, especially teenagers. No, not only teenagers, but really young people who have mental health challenges. Okay, so there you have now on the screen the QR code. You can scan it now, or you can also click on the link that I posted in the chat box for you to be able to claim your certificate. And once again, we thank you very much for joining us in this series. Those of you who are following from the recordings and those of you who are here in the live session, thank you so much. And we hope to see you again in some of our